In single quotation mark, the history of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. Gibbon's take on Christianity is from an Enlightenment perspective, sparking huge controversy, especially those two chapters on early church development. They drew a lot of criticism and even nasty attacks back then. Gibbon wasn't exactly gentle with Christianity. At the start of chapter 15, he wrote, as the empire's huge body faced violent invasions from outside and slow decay from within, a humble little religion quietly slipped into people's hearts, grew in the shadows, got stronger through resistance, and finally planted that victory flag with the cross. Over the ruins of Rome, it's clear Gibbon tied the empire's fall right to the rise of Christianity. If fights over the throne and army infighting were the empire's internal issues and barbarian invasions were external threats, then Christianity's rise spiritually seeped into all of Roman society. Christianity started in Palestine on the Mediterranean's east coast. Its followers believe God, Yahweh, is the only true deity, and all other gods from different cultures are fake. Jesus is God's son who came to earth to suffer and redeem everyone's sins. But this redemption doesn't kick in until the last judgment. Then good folks go to heaven and bad ones head to hell. In Christianity, Christ comes from Greek, meaning Messiah, and that's Jesus. The story of Jesus Christ is the heart of this religion. Believing it is step one for any follower. The story shows a heavenly authority challenging Rome's politics. As a huge empire, Rome had tons of different peoples and religions inside it, and the government was pretty chill about all these beliefs. Gibbon summed this up. In the common people's eyes, all gods were the same. True, in the wise people's eyes, all gods were the same. In officials' eyes, all gods were the same and useful. Imperial officers used religion as a tool for control and didn't mind it. Of course, Christianity didn't openly fight Roman rule. The church pushed give to God what belongs to God and to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Totally cool with obeying earthly power. But Christianity's one God worship, they believed in the truth of the gospel, the path to salvation and heaven. Other religions were just myths and superstitions leading folks straight to hell. They refused to participate in even simple Roman official rituals, like burning incense before the emperor's statue or taking oaths. They usually skipped state celebrations too. This awkwardness inevitably caused trouble. By Diocletian's era, Rome had just recovered from internal and external crises and couldn't tolerate disrespect toward the emperor. Naturally, Christianity became a crackdown target. Churches were banned, bishops and believers arrested, forced to renounce their faith. Those believers who refused to yield and died heroically were honored by the church as martyr saints. But the full-blown crisis of the 3rd century drew more hearts to Christianity. The martyrs actually ignited believers' anticipation for the end times. After Diocletian's death, the tetrarchy system collapsed. Emperors fought each other until Constantine emerged victorious from the chaos. Surprisingly, Constantine made a dramatic religious policy shift. He not only stopped persecuting Christians, but publicly sponsored the church, even getting baptized before death. Why did Constantine support the church? Later debates abound. Some say his mother influenced him, others claim he experienced a miracle, but Gibbon's book mainly discusses his political calculations. But if all subjects embraced Christian doctrine, learning patience and obedience, the imperial throne would be more secure and permanent. To put it bluntly, Constantine used the church's altar as a convenient stepping stool beside his throne. Constantine's conversion might have been historical chance, but it overnight transformed the church's status. Before, Christianity was a persecuted church. Afterwards, it became an organization specially favored by the emperor. Masses of officials, nobles, and commoners followed the emperor's lead, getting baptized en masse. Christian numbers grew unstoppably, becoming the majority religion. 43 years after Constantine's death in 380 AD, Christianity was officially established as Rome's state religion. The immensely grateful church not only called him the Great, but honored him as Jesus' 13th apostle. But unfortunately, during this same period, Rome's frontier defenses deteriorated. In 376 AD, barbarian tribes settled by Rome along the Danube rebelled. The crisis escalated. They invaded Greece first, then Italy. By 410 AD, even Rome itself was sacked while barbarians infiltrated other provinces. The Roman legions that couldn't get paid either disbanded or joined the fighting. Rome's 4th-century rule over the Mediterranean finally came to an end. When telling this history, Gibbon criticized Christianity's negative impacts from several angles. The church promoted patience and obedience, weakening Rome's martial spirit. Believers longed for the afterlife and cared less about the real empire. Society's resources and energy were diverted to pursue the devotion and charity advocated by the church rather than strengthening national defense. After gaining official support, church clergy argued over doctrine, causing sectarian conflicts and social division. In his view, Christianity became the third reason for Rome's decline. What's fascinating is that under barbarian onslaught, Christianity, which became the state religion, proved incredibly resilient. Unlike mighty Rome, the church had solid grassroots organizations. Amid war chaos, it could comfort suffering masses with promises of afterlife salvation. Even barbarian warriors accepted the gospel. Alongside Rome's fall came feudalism's rise and Christianity's cultural dominance. As Gibbon poignantly concludes, Rome's decline history describes the triumph of barbarism and religion. This victory shaped Europe's next 1,000 years. So, there we have Rome's three decline reasons: the emperor's dictatorship suppressing freedom, barbarian challenges, and Christianity weakening Roman spirit. That concludes our coverage. However, Germanic barbarian invasions didn't end the empire itself. Gibbon tracked its remnants' evolution. During Constantine's reign, he moved the capital to Byzantium, connecting Asia and Europe, building a new capital named Constantinople. The Mediterranean had east-west divisions. The west, Italy, Gaul, Spain, North Africa, lagged economically and culturally behind the east: Greece, Asia Minor, Syria, Egypt. Early Rome prospered briefly when legions plundered wealth from surrounding regions. After 3 centuries, things normalized. Plundered wealth gradually flowed back east. Especially after the 3rd-century crisis, Italy's economy couldn't hold up. Constantine followed Diocletian's approach, still dividing the empire into eastern and western parts. But after the capital moved, Rome's political and economic center shifted to Greece. Even the official language gradually changed to Greek, prevalent in the eastern Mediterranean. We Chinese readers often mistakenly think Europe inherited Rome's legacy, when actually Europe was just part of the Western Empire and the more backward coast. 5th-century Germanic invasions only toppled the Western Empire. The Eastern Empire, with Constantinople as capital, survived and still ruled the more developed eastern regions. Legally speaking, the Eastern Empire was the legitimate successor. Constantinople always flew the Roman banner, but by the 7th century, they faced another barbarian wave. These invaders came from the Arabian desert southeast of the empire. Not just fierce warriors, they founded Islam. Arabs seized Roman Egypt and Syria. The Eastern Empire was reduced to parts of modern Greece and Turkey, surviving until 1453. So, only when Ottoman sultans captured Constantinople did the Roman Empire truly vanish from the world. The last 3 volumes of The Decline and Fall cover the Eastern Empire's continuation, spanning a millennium. What's fascinating is Gibbon's record of political, military, and cultural clashes after the Mediterranean's east-west split. To Europe, the Eastern Empire was peripheral. They interacted but also conflicted. Constantinople saw itself as true Rome, yet Europeans often called it the Byzantine Empire. Their once unified church split into Latin-speaking Catholicism and Greek Orthodoxy, West versus East, mutual hostility. Crusades aimed partly to help Byzantium against Muslims, but European warriors joined Byzantine civil wars, sacked Constantinople, crippling the empire. Byzantium was wealthier than Europe, read ancient Greek classics, and viewed Latin Europeans as uncouth barbarians. Post-Renaissance Europeans read ancient Latin classics, looking down on Greeks. Even if Greek culture was advanced, Rome ultimately ruled. Even in the 18th century, many European scholars didn't know Greek, Gibbon included. He mastered Greek literature but struggled with Greek sources when writing Byzantine history. Therefore, his descriptions of Byzantium faced much criticism. Only by the late 18th century, driven by German intellectuals, did Europe see a surge in worshiping ancient Greek art and culture. And those scholars who constantly quoted Greece emerged. All right, that concludes our introduction to Edward Gibbon's The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. So why does this historical work on Rome's decline hold such immense influence and get hailed as a classic by later generations? There are roughly two main reasons. First, this book elevated humanity's understanding of history, marking an epoch-making significance. In the 18th century, humanity entered the Enlightenment era. People no longer settled for knowing simple historical facts or brief biographies of figures. Many historians aimed to explore complex world mechanisms through observing the past. Before Gibbon's work, Europe was dominated by antiquarianism, a field examining history through moral and humanistic philosophical lenses. This scholarship resembled textual research during China's Qing dynasty. Scholars would uncover stories behind Roman-era fragments or inscriptions they found. For example, was so-and-so Christian? Was a certain celebrity's master a historical figure recorded in texts? Such research felt like intellectual games. Gibbon's work tackled far more complex issues: political causality, religious evolution, societal development, and moral cultural ties, elevating the discourse entirely. Our modern historical cognition traces its roots to Gibbon's influence. Decline and Fall became a classic precisely through this impact. The second main reason is its embodiment of Gibbon's personal wisdom. And for a long period, the book's style was a model of English prose. Gibbon's wisdom stemmed from his rich experiences and his era's intellectual climate. First, let's discuss his diverse life experiences. Edward Gibbon was born in 1737 in suburban London to a well-off family. He enjoyed stable contentment throughout his life, not wealthy but comfortably provided for. In 1753, aged 15, he went to Switzerland. Exposed to Enlightenment ideas, he lost religious fervor and resolved to become an author. 5 years later, he returned to England, just as the 7 Years' War broke out between Britain and France. His family sent him to a military camp where he stayed for 3 years, drilling and patrolling with others. This amateur military stint helped Gibbon understand Roman legion life firsthand. In 1774, he secured a seat in the House of Commons and became a commissioner at the Board of Trade. He didn't have to do much, yet earned £750 annually. And Augustus making the Roman Senate a mere formality angered Gibbon, a reaction influenced by his own parliamentary experience. Historical writing requires imagination. Gibbon's experiences fully supported this. In his autobiography, Gibbon expressed self-satisfaction, grateful he wasn't born a slave, barbarian, or peasant, but in a civilized free nation during an age of science and philosophy, to a respectable family enjoying wealth's privileges. 18th century Britain's calm political climate contrasted with revolutionary France, where scholars clashed fiercely with government. Uh, you know, Britain's moderation allowed Gibbon to approach history with rare detachment and composure. This gave decline and fall distance from contemporary turmoil, making it an English prose model that influenced generations. Even during 221, Churchill quoted from Decline and Fall in speeches. Ultimately, Gibbon's greatest impact was showing how Europe's superpower collapsed. Even today, Westerners analyzing the British Empire's dissolution or American hegemony's decline inevitably reference Rome and Gibbon's masterpiece. All right, that concludes our exploration of the decline and fall. Reading notes are below the audio. See you tomorrow.